Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on Office 365. You've gone mobile, now what? So we've got a really great presentation prepared for you today, and it's all going to be focusing on how to integrate a mobile strategy within your Office 365 platform. So let's advance the slide. Do I have Chris? Are you there?
I am.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So I'm Jill Hanneman. I'm with Portal Solutions. I'm actually coming to all of you from our office in Washington, D.C. We're having a nice, warm, toasty summer day. I am our Director of Advisory Services here at Portal, and I am also serving as the editor of our blog, Portal Solutions Digital Workplace Today. So you may often get some emails from me talking about what is going on in the digital workplace and the latest and greatest with SharePoint and Office 365. I myself have a bit of a background in information management with taxonomy, metadata design, and leveraging SharePoint as an information management platform. So with me today, I am also joined by my colleague, Chris Poteet. So Chris, will you say a few words about yourself to the group?
Yes, thanks, Jill. My name is Chris Poteet. As Jill mentioned, I work in the UX capability at Portal Solutions alongside Jill. You can see my blog there. My areas of interest vary widely in the user experience field, but specialties around content, interaction design, and user research.
Thanks so much, Chris. So I'm going to be your MC for this webinar, and Chris has a very nice presentation prepared for you all. We also have with us today, go ahead and advance the slide, our special guest from Harmony, David Lavenda. David, are you there?
Yeah, hi. How's everybody doing today? My name, as you said, thank you for the introduction, is David Lavenda. I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy at Harmony, also a frequent contributor to Fast Company and also CMS Wire. And in my spare time, I also do academic research in the field of information overload, specifically on the impact and the causes within organizations. So glad to be here today.
Thanks so much, David. So before we get started with our program, I just wanted to say a few words about our sponsor for today, Portal Solutions. We are a company of about 45 consultants. We are located in 2 areas. We have our office here in Washington, D.C., and we have another office in the Boston, Massachusetts area. We've been in the SharePoint space for the last 11 years, going on 12, and consequently, we have done over 250 plus implementations of SharePoint. So this also includes Office 365 and SharePoint 2013. So already in the last 2 years, we've been able to gain many lessons learned over close to 24 implementations of SharePoint 2013. So we are open to having conversations about mobile, about Office 365, about SharePoint in general. So let's advance the slide and focus about our conversation today. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to Chris in just a minute, and he is going to share a case study for a company called Zoll, where we focus on mobile design and mobile first strategy. We are then going to transfer the conversation over to David, who will then be focusing on driving mobile initiatives and strategies surrounding that. So just before we kick everything off, I do want to make this interactive. And we've got a couple polls in which we'd like some feedback from all of you. So we're really interested in tailoring these conversations to what your interests are and where you are in your process. So the polls that we're going to introduce over the course of this presentation are really gauged to just get some feedback from you and to make sure that we're able to tailor the conversation to your needs and where you are. Likewise, we're also open to making this interactive and taking questions as they come. So you'll notice in the right-hand panel that there is a questions bar that you are open to sending us some questions. And I will be receiving them as they come in, and we'll be asking our speakers as the conversation flows. So continue to be a part of the dialogue and make sure that you get what you need out of this conversation today. So with that, I'm going to ask you all a couple of questions. So our first question is, which of the following do at least some employees at your companies use? And so please select one of these options, but this is just a way for us to get a better sense of how your employees are leveraging mobile currently, and maybe there will be some gaps in what people do use because you don't have a mobile strategy in place for some of your applications. So we'll take a minute to populate, give you a chance to respond to the survey, and then I'll be able to share the results with you after we do it. So, and then we'll have a really nice case study from Chris about what we were able to do for Zoll for a mobile strategy. And just to talk a little bit more about Chris and his role at Portal Solutions, Chris actually works for our user experience and user interface design capability within Portal. And so it's a very interdisciplinary capability where we've got designers, we have UI front-end developers, and user experience experts. And realizing that UX really covers quite a broad range of capabilities and aspects that really tie into business analysis, information architecture. It really is a very interdisciplinary approach and a user-driven approach to how we work with our customers to build capability and to build out your site. So I see now that about 83% of you have responded. And so I can share the results quickly with you. So it looks as though about 33% have tablets or smartphones for work purposes other than email. So that's great. That's really great to see. And then kind of mobile calendar contacts. So I know that sometimes it's a little limiting to only be able to select one, but this is just a good way of kind of gaining some insight in what you all are using. So with that, I'm going to transition the conversation over to Chris, and Chris is going to lead us through the case study of Zoll.
Great. Thanks, Jill. So I want to give you a little bit of background before I get into what we actually accomplished for Zoll to help you understand the dynamics and what Zoll was trying to accomplish in their project. So the first thing to think about is that Zoll is a healthcare provider company, and they brought us in to work on what they call their LifeVest network application. So let's talk about what a LifeVest is. The LifeVest is a product that Zoll manufactures and sells to monitor sudden cardiac arrest patients before a permanent surgical solution is completed. So what that means is you go into the doctor diagnoses you with this condition, and then they'll set up a time, usually 2 to 3 months in the future, where this permanent surgical solution is implanted. But between then, you need some kind of gap to make sure that the sudden cardiac arrest doesn't end up killing you. So the LifeVest is basically a portable defibrillator machine that monitors your heart rate, and if necessary, will give you a defibrillation. So Zoll has a massive infrastructure around selling them as one of their main products. And the way that the salespeople and the management interact with ensuring that their goals are being accomplished through the sales of LifeVest happen through the LifeVest network application. The application itself has many components to it, including commission, goals, as well as quotas that a salesperson would be interested in seeing. It also includes a CRM system for tracking information about physicians that they're going out and interacting with, trying to convince them to prescribe the LifeVest. And then they have patient data in there as well that actually is fed from the LifeVest itself. So over the years, the LifeVest is a network, the application that you've seen, probably many of you have experiences that over time features start getting added. But over time, as the application goes on, it starts to be a little disconnected and hard to move around in. It lacked UI consistency. So they desired to do something different and redesign the network application. So there were actually two phases to the project. The first one was a research phase, which I was not intimately involved in, but I consulted on. What that meant is that we had two consultants go in and actually research, sit down with stakeholders, understand the business needs of the project, in this case the redesign of the application, and then go through a series of structured interviews with salespeople and management about the types of things and goals that need to be accomplished through the application. We then put those together, generated some hypotheses about where to go forward, design it, and then we started the design phase, which where I came in and then was the lead designer. So I want to walk you through that. So let's talk about the design phase. Now, design itself, particularly of web applications and GUIs, graphical user interfaces, have lots of different kinds of philosophies. You're probably familiar with user-centered design philosophy, which is the most common accepted way to do user experience design. But it becomes a little more granular when you start looking at individual applications and their context and needs. So I want to walk you through the three principles that were foundational for redesigning the LifeVest network application. The first thing that we wanted to do was design this mobile first. There are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, it provides focus and clarity. Now, mobile first is it's an idea that you've probably heard of before, but struggles from a lot of misconceptions. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're concerned about the device first, necessarily. It's about the constraints that exist within that type of environment. So when you're on a handheld device, obviously the screen is smaller, you have different connectivity issues, different focus issues, how much is someone actually engaging with it or doing other things at the same time. So it allows you to self-impose constraints that allow you to be more creative. And one of those is, that I think is the most beneficial, happens on the content strategy end. It allows you to look at something and instead of getting caught in debates on, should this slider appear on the home page or should this widget appear over here, it really removes a lot of that and allows you to say, because when you're looking at a small viewport, a small screen area, it allows you to say, okay, what really is the most important thing? The second major benefit is that it allows you to think in a forward-thinking manner. So for many years we were caught in the desktop 1024 by 768 design view, and that's what we designed for. We would ask questions in our requirements like, what resolutions are we designing for? That question doesn't exist anymore, right? We go for device agnosticism now. We want our content to move and scale across any type of devices, regardless of whether it might exist today or in the future. The second thing is that the application needed to be task-focused. That means that this application wasn't something that someone came in just to browse for, right? There were utilitarian purpose that existed for it. A salesperson is out on a call, he needs to get information, some sales and marketing materials about it, or later he wants to interact with their quota goals, see where they're at. These are specific tasks that are in mind. So being that, we want to structure the application to facilitate that. So any kind of labels, meaning any kind of navigation that exists, the user interface agreement should facilitate task completion. And then lastly, when we think about the information architecture, the categories of content are built around these tasks and functions. The last thing is my jargon that I'm going to throw in here, is that we wanted to ensure the application had strong information sense. If we think about the idea of smelling something, maybe sometimes you smelled something a certain way, but when you actually got to where something was leading you with the scent, you found out it wasn't what you thought it was. Well, that problem exists a lot in applications as well. We can look at navigation items and click into them and find out it's not what we wanted. So that doesn't provide a good experience. So we wanted everything to be sure that in the new information architecture, provided clear indicators to get to the information behind it. So on top of the information design, there was the interface design itself. Now you can design, mobile first really has two aspects, right? It has, if you're not familiar with, it has a content strategy approach where you're thinking about how to actually create content, maintain content in a mobile first way that we talked about earlier. But there's also the technical implementation or where the interface is actually created. So we did them both mobile first. So our content strategy and information architecture were built that way. And then for Zoll, we provide them heavy interaction design guidance. Interaction design is a very large field. What I mean by it in this particular case is that we provided Zoll because we weren't the ones actually implementing the system. Zoll was itself for their internal teams. They needed extensive guidance on how the user should interact with the system, all the different types of interactions. So we gave them guidance on every one of those. And I'll show you an example here in a second. As we move into the deliverables that we gave them, this is probably, many of you have worked with wireframes before. It was where we wanted to start. Now, as you can see here, these wireframes and every one that we did for them was built foundationally on a mobile-first approach. So these are the wireframes we showed them first. What does this device look like at a smaller viewport? So by viewport just means a smaller screen area. So you can see here, here's the home page. You can see the navigation is built in a mobile-first way that allows touch interactivity and scales for the screen. What you're actually looking at as well is actually what we built for them, what were called contextualized dashboards, because we saw that there were different levels of the sales process, from territory people to regional people to high levels of executives, and each of them had different needs that they wanted to get in a dashboard fashion. So we proposed contextualized dashboards for them. So whatever device they come on, they can get the information they need quickly and easily. On the right, you can see the menu that expands. This is an example of the interaction design guidance that we provided for them. So we didn't just talk in an esoteric way about these are the types of interactions that we suggest you have. We showed them all those, how they actually worked on all of them. So we really wanted to give them an entire framework to think about design going forward. Here is that actual page that you saw in a mobile-first way. That was just expanded out to a larger scale, so you can see how the grid snapped into place, how everything is now floated next to each other, and the menus actually function now in a drop-down fashion. So it was a way for them to see in the wireframing phase how everything expanded from the smallest viewport down on the mobile-first way up to the larger screen you see here. And then we moved into actual, we didn't do graphical design comps for every single page in the system because that would have been a lot of work that wouldn't have provided a lot of value over time. We wanted to give them really a way to think about their design in a more vocabulary sense. So we provided some representative samples, and this is using their aesthetic, so their typography and their colors and guidelines. And then we built out the graphical implementation of this. So you can see the menu that was wireframed there earlier. Now you can see digitally. I'll point you to the footer because the footer was a great example of us, just one example of how we were able to take research insights and turn that into actual interfaces that met that user-centered design criteria I talked about. When we researched, we found out help was a big problem for them, right? The users just didn't understand how to use specific functions at specific times. So we took that idea and we said, why not dedicate the whole footer to helping users there and actually provide them contextual help based on whatever page they're on. So that's a good example of taking research and combining that into an actual interface. And then here is that mobile first comp now expanded out so you can see the color provided in the graphs. And this is the view for a territory manager, which is essentially a salesperson. And so you can see the things they're most worried about to get in and get out: quota performance, their medical order performance, commission, and then a lot of the language you see below about acceptance of pre-call plans are specific to Zoll that I'm just not going to have the time to get into here. But this is a way to really make sure that it was a really user-centered, research-oriented approach that was done in a mobile-first and responsive way. So the client was exceedingly happy with the solution. They're now doing implementation. We provide occasional guidance to them. But I want to talk to you about a couple of big takeaways that I hope you see from this. The first, doing application design using mobile-first and responsive web design requires extensive planning and thoughtfulness. It should touch everything. If you're going in, you're talking about responsive web design, and you're talking about it as a feature, as in the UI should look good on a tablet and a phone, you're already halfway missing the mark, because responsive web design and mobile-first methodology should be at its core a content strategy approach that I showed you about earlier. It should touch, there's nothing that it doesn't touch. The biggest conversation now that's happening amongst web designers is how do we do process with clients in a responsive world, because it's such a process way of thinking about things. The second thing is don't design in a vacuum. Consistently and thoughtfully engage the business and users to build user-centered solutions. And I just showed you a couple examples in contextual dashboards and the footer design as well were just two quick examples. So I'll be happy to take any questions that any of you have about the Zoll project either here or going forward, as well as how our capability thinks and talks about user experience in a responsive and mobile-first world. So that's it for me. I will now turn it over. I'm going to make David the presenter now and let him talk to you for a while.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Great conversation. So before we transition over to David, we've got another poll for you all. So this question is, what is your current strategy for deploying mobile apps and services? So please select which option most appropriately aligns to you. And this will be pretty helpful for David's conversation from Harmony, and we'll continue talking about implementing mobile strategy. All right. So we got a pretty good representation in place. We're going to go ahead and close that. And here are the results. So for the most part, 77% do not have any current strategy in place. And so hopefully the example with Zoll resonated and can give you some pointers on how to start working through your strategy. But I think the conversation that we're now going to hear from David will give you some more strategic guidance. So David, with that, I'd like to pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Following up on the poll and also on some of the points that Chris made in the first part of this webinar, I think that two elements that Chris spoke about are very important, and we'll return to these. One is the user centricity element of developing mobile applications for organizations, and the second is preserving the context, or context-specific element of preserving people's workflow, and we'll return to those. Those will be very important points. But the broader question that we'd like to ask at this point is, a lot of companies have invested in mobile initiatives, and they're trying to get the business value out of it. And there are two kind of strategies that are out there that we'd like to explore to see and give some examples, and to offer some advice of how to make those mobile initiatives deliver the business value for which you've invested in them in the first place. So let's start with the first point about some information that was presented recently at the Gartner Portals Content and Collaboration Summit in Los Angeles about a month ago. And what Gartner looks at is and says this is pretty much where the market stands. BYOD programs are pretty much yesterday's news. Organizations have provisioned devices for their employees, or certainly portions of their employees. And those folks today are able to get what Gartner calls the first tier of value, which means able to use email, calendaring, contacts, pretty much a personal productivity suite of tools. But that's pretty much what folks are able to do today. And companies looking to recover these enormous investments in mobile devices are looking to get some more business value out of that. And that's what Gartner calls the second tier of value, which is where companies are today trying to figure out how to get that value out of the programs. So they've identified three main areas that define the next step in reaching that business value. One of them is content creation, allowing workers to use mobile devices to create documents, to share multimedia, to communicate in a richer fashion than just emailing. But it's not just about creating content. It's also about being able to interact with people, so reviewing content, annotating documents, highlighting, responding, collaborating in real time around things that people are publishing so that you're able to leverage the use of the mobile device to attain what it really is meant to be, which is the anytime, anywhere workplace. Allow people to work anywhere, anytime on the appropriate device for that particular task at hand. And of course, the third case identified by Gartner was the high-value content consumption. Executives who need access to important documents, negotiations, they need to be able to see these and respond to these very quickly, contracts and things like that, or field staff, people out in the field, people in the insurance industry, emergency workers who need to be able to consume important documents, and we'll see an example of that in just a few moments. So this is pretty straightforward. We understand what we are trying to do. We want to allow mobile workers to be able to interact with content, create, review, and consume content. The what is pretty straightforward. It's the how that's the big question. I mean, you have to have some sort of a strategy, because just putting the devices out there and giving people applications isn't going to work. We know that the biggest impediment to adopting any kind of technology, and mobile devices are certainly no different, is changing people's behavior. So you have to come up with some way to make it very easy for people to use the tools to do valuable tasks for work. Yet on the other hand, create those applications that represent high value to what the employee does on a daily basis. So the match of those two, high value and ease of use, are the two things that you need to somehow get to do. And there's two strategies to doing that. One is develop mass appeal apps that appeal to the general workforce, so making it easy for people to do things like take notes on tablets during meetings and share them with colleagues. This approach focuses on the ease of use element in a broader, kind of simpler workflow task that people are working on. The second approach is to develop high-value business-specific mobile services, which focuses on the high value and on the specific elements of the business. So things like giving railway workers access to safety procedures during an emergency while they're offline. Is it you're able to save lives and avert disaster by reacting quickly. This, while being relevant for a relatively small element of the workforce, has an enormous value in the business payoff. So the question is, which approach is the right one? And we're going to take a look at some real-world examples and to explore this a bit more. So let's start with some of the business-specific mobile services. And we're going to look at two cases. The first one is from the world of finance, financial services. And the case here is very much around the idea of giving people like account managers, people in banks or other financial services companies, the ability to securely access important documentation on the go and to collaborate around those documents in real time. The business value here, which is very high, is to allow people to work so they can reduce the time for negotiations and prevent costly mistakes by working on the right version of documents, while avoiding the data leakage that happens through the use of unsanctioned storage and collaboration tools. So that's a kind of a tall task to do, but that's one that we're going to show you how that works right here. So the three things that you want to capture in this application to capture that business value is, one is support multiple security models. So many companies have already invested in mobile device management or MDM solutions, is to not have to depend on a specific one, but to really support anything that's out there so it appeals to a broad audience as possible. And then to allow people to view, edit, and follow business-related criteria. So be able to focus on documents, find those right documents, search for documents classified using a company's taxonomy. Those types of things are really important make that application successful. And the third thing is also to let people not only find the documents, but also use familiar tools to edit them, to respond, and to collaborate. And there's nothing more familiar to people than Microsoft Office apps. So working with Microsoft Office Online, for example, you want to allow organizations or people to edit documents using what they know, but not having to download the documents to the mobile device, which may create some sort of a security risk. So let's take a look at this, how this actually works in practice. And let's assume this is a live demo. And let's assume that we're already logged into our MDM solution and that I'm working now in the secure environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate. I'm looking at my this is actually my view of my SharePoint environment. And I should mention that a lot of the demos we're showing here use SharePoint and Office 365, primarily because about 80% of organizations use SharePoint and now increasingly Office 365 as their infrastructure for both document management as well as increasingly for other things like collaboration and microblogging and working in real time with colleagues. So looking at the SharePoint environment, what I'm going to do is navigate to a library that has lots of documents and different topics, but I just want to focus on those documents that relate to a particular customer that I'm working with. So in this case, it's going to be one of the customers is NIBC, and I want to look for documents that have been tagged with the tag NIBC, and I locate those, and we'll see that there's a number of documents that answer that. Now, I can get all the data associated with these documents as well. For example, if I click on a document, I can open it to view or edit using Office Online. So we can see that I can open, I won't do it here, but I can open the document on Word Online and edit it right in place here. I also, you can see here, I have access to all the metadata and the version history, so I can work in a very rich manner with the document and make sure that I'm working on the latest copy of it as well. I also might want to send it to a customer, to a colleague, and the way I can do that is just by clicking on the envelope, and I can send the document as a link, so I don't expose the document as an attachment in email. Email pops up with a link already in the email. I just send it off to who I want, and the document goes to where it goes to. You can see from this example that I've worked in one context. I'm working within one application, and yet I've been able to not only search for information, follow information, but also share that information without having to toggle between different applications. And this is going to repeat itself in some of the other examples as well. That preservation of context and the preservation of the workflow by focusing on the task rather than on the underlying tools that are beneath the task that we're doing. So the second example of the high-value business-specific application comes from the transportation industry, and this is an industry that's highly mobile because obviously transportation folks are working all sorts of different places. In many of those places, the connectivity is not very dependable. So a lot of times, folks are building railways or working in building roads and so on. They're in places where there's poor network coverage, and in those cases there's a very importance to be able to work with online documents for emergency documentation, to have access to emergency operations, as well as to be able to access and connect with people who might be very important to share or get information from in these different situations. So the business value of allowing remote workers to be able to access information on tablets from those remote locations potentially could save lives if people can respond faster to and better to emergency situations, mitigate environmental disasters by doing the right procedures at the right time, and to say nothing about the enormous cost savings that could come from acting quickly and correctly in emergency situations. So the three things that need to be delivered in this type of application in order to solve the business user's problem is one is to follow documents, but also allow people to search for colleagues, for people who might need to reach out to those folks to get the information they need or to share the information about the particular case they're working on. Secondly, automate the pushing of the latest versions of emergency documents, of emergency procedures out to workers so they don't have to worry about all the time making sure that they've got the latest copy on their tablets or even smartphones. And thirdly, by providing all this updated information in a digital format on their mobile devices, we're able to reduce an enormous amount of paper-based overhead of having to drive around in the truck with all the operations manuals and throw them out every time a new version of them comes out. So the value here is enormously high, again, potentially life-saving. So let's take a look at how this particular application will look like. So in this example, we're going to be an engineer who's traveling directly to an incident they've been called out to without having to think about what they're taking with them. It's all on the tablet. And while on the way out to the emergency site, we're going to reach out to a subject matter expert and search for people in SharePoint. In this case, we're going to be searching for our government liaison, somebody who I'm going to need to update about the situation in the field. And it looks like Deborah Dawson is our person, and I can get Deborah Dawson's SharePoint profile, including her contact information and other information I need to know about her background. So I could click on her email address here and literally reach out to her, or if this was a phone, click on her phone number and connect to her directly, again, without having to toggle between different applications. So now I've reached out to Deborah, updated her what's going on, and now I'm out at the emergency at the location, and I need access to those documents, those emergency documents. But, well, I guess I'm out of luck. There doesn't seem to be any network connectivity here, and the 3G network doesn't seem to be doing much either. So I'm going to simulate being offline here by going into airplane mode, and show you that I can also access those documents that I need. So I'm going to be looking for those offline documents in the offline folder, and I see that I've got several. And this one, the framework document, is just the information I need to deal with my emergency, and I'm sure it's the latest because it's been provisioned for me and pushed out on a regular basis. So I'm fully confident that this is the document that I need, and I'm able to view it and to work with it right here in the field. So I got all the data I need. Disaster averted. We saved valuable time, potentially saved lives by having the right tools. All right. So this looks pretty promising. This is two solid examples, and there are obviously many more very specific business cases where there's an enormous value to providing very specific use cases and the ability for people to work while they're on the field through their tablets or smartphones. But there's another approach, and that other approach looks at mass appeal mobile apps. So again, giving a broad cross-section of workers the ability to do everyday tasks and make it extremely easy for them. So we'll look at several examples here and contrast them to the cases we just looked at. So one example is project management. Now, we all belong to project teams, and at least one of them. Most of us probably belong to several project teams. And while each project is slightly different, they do have a lot of things in common. Like, you know, you have to get content, there's documents, there's planning documents, there's reference materials, there's specs that have to be worked on, there are timelines that are updated all the time. So there's lots of different documents that accompany the projects as the projects progress. But there's also other types of elements. There are things like to-do lists, calendars with upcoming events and meetings that constantly are changing, announcements, key contacts that we need to talk to during the progression of the project, and being updated just on a regular basis about the things that are happening as the project moves along. So let's take a look at a kind of a broad project management app that would fulfill a lot of these business requirements. Ensuring people have up-to-date project documents, being able to share the documents and edit them, but also be able to get information about tasks and other types of lists as well. So the business value here is a little bit broader than in the previous cases. It's reducing costly mistakes when people are working with old versions of documents or out of date versions of documents, what we sometimes call document chaos. It allows you to have accurate project documentation, which is really important for governance, all the information stored in a single place, up to date. And it also allows you to be able to classify and therefore find information later on, which is really important for projects. So this project management app will fulfill 3 requirements to, again, provide that business value. One is make it easy for people to publish project-related content. Secondly, allow people to access content that is not only documents but also calendars, tasks, and announcements, and make sure that people can follow those and have the latest versions of them and also be updated to calendar events and updated tasks. So let's see how this works in practice. So we've set up a SharePoint site for projects, and this is what we're looking at here, and particularly important to, in this case, to follow the status updates. So project members want to be able to pre-read materials before meetings and make sure that they have the latest copies of the documents to avoid that chaos. So to do this, documents can be tagged and provisioned by the project manager, just like we saw in the case of the emergency response in the transportation market. At the beginning of the project, in this case, we're going to be working on the SPC project, which is one that we worked on recently here at Harmony. And we're going to be looking for all the documents that have been tagged according to that SPC, with that SPC tag, to see what those documents are about. And we see it comes up as a tag here. But in this case, what we want to do is not only view the documents and edit them, but also follow them. Because in a project, documents have a propensity to change and to be updated. And we don't want to have to call people or constantly poll the email or SharePoint to see when these documents have changed. We want to be able to be updated and to see those in real time and to be notified when those documents change. So we're going to follow those. We're going to add them as favorites so that we can then see them later in an update stream and be immediately notified when those things change without having to toggle between different apps to get that information. Okay. Secondly, there are other items that are related to this project that are not specifically documents. So we want to also do a text search for things related to this project. So we're looking for SPC. And we find that there are not only some documents but also some other list items like event calendar, several calendars, or some messages that are also associated with this particular project. And again, we want to be able to follow these so that, for example, if somebody updates the event calendar with some new activities, those will immediately be reflected, and I'll be notified of that in real time. So this provides a lot of value to many, many people in the company that need to alleviate the need to continually poll for information and make sure that we're working on the latest things is really important. Okay, so the last example I'm going to show is another one, which is a mass appeal mobile app, which is for paperless initiatives. So we know that many organizations are trying to minimize the use of paper, and one of the biggest wastes of paper is company meeting summaries and minutes. So a great use case is to allow people to summarize meetings on a tablet, update it to a central location, and then have colleagues be aware of it so they can read and make comments on that. So let's see how you do that. One way is to, you could send a link of a document to people, but that involves some work. So the easier way to do this would just be to allow people to automatically see these updates in their activity stream. So we're going to show an activity stream that shows everybody's the things that they're following, their views, their locations, and also their Yammer feed, all aggregated and integrated into a single screen experience. So we see all the updates related to things that I'm interested in following here. I see Annie Tucker has updated a document called Harmony Booth, and you can see that that's a update coming from SharePoint because you see the little SharePoint logo in the bottom. You also see below there's a Yammer update that is also in this stream, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. But what we want to do now as we're working on this paperless initiative is I see that this Harmony Booth document, PDF document, has been updated. Now, anyone who can has access to this document can also has edit rights can work on the document, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to open the document directly from the update stream because this is something that I also want to weigh in on. I have some ideas about what the booths should look like at this upcoming show. I see usually, as I saw before, I see all the metadata, but I want to annotate this document without having to copy the document, open it in some sort of annotation tool, upload it again to SharePoint, which is way too complicated for the average user to get their arms around. Keeping the workflow simple, preserving the context makes it very easy for people to do these tasks. So we see that somebody has suggested, Annie has suggested moving the demo station to the front of the booth. I think we should move the SharePoint challenge to the front of the booth. So we're just going to make that annotation right here and then save the document. And everyone who's following this document will also, or this view, will also be able to see now that I've updated it and see my changes and be able to look through the version history at all the things that have been done in the past. But in addition to that, I want to notify the team about some ideas that I have about this this booth as well. So I want to update people through Yammer. So without having to open another application, I'm going to go directly here to create to participate in the Yammer discussion about the SharePoint conference, and click on that and go right to the conference, make some comments here, and even share the link to that document that I just updated for folks who may not be following it on the activity stream. They'll see it on their Yammer stream as well. So again, single app, no need to navigate, integration of a lot of the tools you're already using into a single screen experience, and that's what makes it so easy for people to adopt and what drives the mobile initiative forward. So that shows two examples of mass appeal mobile app approach and two examples from a business-specific mobile services approach about how companies can drive their mobile initiatives forward. And the question at the end is, who's right? And you folks answered in the polling question that most of you don't have a strategy yet, and I think that's pretty much the case that we see in many of the prospects and customers that we deal with on a daily basis. But just as a matter of introduce Harmony just for 2 minutes, is that Harmony is the product that I've been using to show you the examples of how to provide these apps to users in organizations. And Harmony supports both ways, whichever way you go with your mobile initiative. So just a few words about what Harmony is. Harmony is really a set of apps that provide the single screen experience that you saw here, aggregating all your Microsoft products like SharePoint, Office 365, OneDrive for Business, Lync, Yammer, Office Online, Outlook Web App, and email into a single screen experience where the work context is preserved. So instead of having to toggle between multiple applications, with Harmony it's all one smooth workflow. And it works, the mobile version works on iOS, Android, Windows Phone, BlackBerry 10, and there's also versions for the desktop that work as an email plugin and an Outlook web app widget. So as a next step, if you want to explore a bit more about what Harmony can do to help you move your mobile initiative forward, we suggest you either try Harmony today through this QR code. You can download any version, a free version of any of the mobile apps available, or to get more information, feel free to download the Guide to Mobile Collaboration and the QR code on the right side of the screen. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jill.
Thanks so much, David. those were really great examples in showcasing how to bring mobile and tablet productivity to the workplace. So I found it to all be very interesting. So we are wrapping it up. Thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. Unfortunately, it seemed as though we weren't able to answer a couple of them on the air, so we will send out responses directly to those of you who did participate and send out a question. We have a couple of programs and announcements to make just before we wrap up. We are advertising a free workshop to ensure your mobile initiatives succeed, and you can work with someone like Chris from our team to work with you to refining your mobile strategy and focusing on a user-driven approach for a mobile-first strategy. And we can also facilitate discussions back with Harmony and David for any other additional questions regarding their technology and how that can be integrated and how planning around your mobile strategy can including Harmony products as well. So feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in a free 2-hour workshop. And then David, if you will advance the slides. We also are a certified digital workplace Microsoft Experience Center hub. So if you happen to be in the Washington, D.C. area, we have a Microsoft Experience Center set up in our office for digital workplace experiences. And essentially, it is the entire suite of Microsoft's latest and greatest, all working, all connecting together. As I'm sure many of us know, it's almost nearly impossible to find this, this type of completely up-to-date, completely interconnected Microsoft environment. And so this is really an example to bring you and some of your colleagues in to see how technology has evolved with Microsoft products and to start getting some ideas of how this technology could work to improve productivity within your own company. So it is a you get your own laptop, everybody drives through and gets to click around and explore, and we even have Harmony products included in this, in our Mech experience. So definitely reach out to us if you're interested in signing up for one of these. It's up to around 6 individuals who can participate, and we show you a good time post-breakfast. It's a very educational experience for a lot of organizations. And with that, David, if you'll advance the slide. We would really like to thank you for your time today, spending your afternoon with us. And feel free to reach out and follow up with any questions that you may have, either for David or for Chris. And feel free to reach out to me for any of the offers that I just talked about, the free 2-hour workshop for mobile strategy, as well as the digital workplace experience. And with that, David, thank you very much for your time. Chris, thank you very much for your time. And I hope everybody has a great day. Bye.